In the Middle East, scenes of highly violent conflict persist. The suffering of the Palestinian people continues due to unprecedented oppression, while the Israeli army has intensified its control over Gaza to the highest level. With all their might, Israeli troops have laid siege to Gaza City, triggering direct clashes with Hamas. The Israeli military said it surrounded the city and launched operations to weaken Hamas infrastructure and dismantle tunnels the militants used to carry out attacks. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has described this phase as the second stage of the war. In addition to the ground offensive, airstrikes also continue. Lieutenant Colonel Richard Hecht, spokesman for the Israel Defense Forces, clarified that Gaza City is not yet completely surrounded, and urged the population to move south, to areas that Israel considers safer, although unfortunately, they are also targeted of air attacks. Recently, the Ministry of Health, under the direction of Hamas, announced that at least 9,027 Palestinians have lost their lives in Israeli attacks on Gaza. Tragically, the number of Palestinian victims increases daily. Hecht said in a press conference, "We have deployed our forces in the north and we will gradually advance inside the city to address the Hamas infrastructure. The humanitarian route remains open. We have given people the option to go to the south and that option is still available." Hamas's extensive network of tunnels, known as the subway by Israel, represents one of the biggest military challenges faced by Israeli forces. These tunnels are used to store supplies, hold hostages, and move undetected throughout the territory. This network is extensive, sophisticated, and much easier to defend than to attack. The Israel Defense Forces reported that in recent clashes, Israeli troops have located and neutralized active combat tunnels. Mustafa Dalul, a Hamas battalion commander who led forces in Gaza City, was also reported to have died overnight. Israel Defense Forces spokesman Hecht stated that in the last day, 130 Hamas fighters lost their lives. The previous night's fighting was so intense that Israel also mourned the loss of 2 more soldiers in the fighting. Israel has repeatedly urged Palestinians to evacuate the north while targeting Hamas strongholds in the region. Hecht addressed a message to the Palestinian population. "Our operational objective was to surround the city, and we have managed to establish key points. Although this is not yet a siege, those who wish to move south have options. However, with Israeli forces controlling main roads and ongoing fighting, the journey south can be dangerous." Hecht explained that the attacks in the south are primarily directed at Hamas, and if the group's activity is detected in that area, measures are taken primarily from the air. Importantly, according to legal experts, calling on the population to evacuate does not absolve Israel of its responsibility under international humanitarian law to protect civilians during the conflict. Some Palestinians cannot leave the north due to health or mobility issues, while others choose to stay in their homes, due to a lack of options or because shelters in the south are overcrowded, or because attacks continue in that direction. Despite growing international opposition to Israel's military effort, Israeli forces continued their devastating bombing campaign in the Gaza Strip, even after the Biden administration pushed for a humanitarian pause in the conflict. This generated criticism globally. The attacks spread to Jabalia, a densely populated area just north of Gaza City. Rescue efforts were underway throughout the day to assist people in this area. However, one notable allegation arose in the midst of these events. According to media outlets affiliated with the Syrian opposition, an Israeli drone had eliminated 2 men near Damascus. According to the report, these 2 individuals were shot while riding a motorcycle in the town of Beit Jan. The deceased were identified as Okasha Abu Jarrah and Saher Asadi, who allegedly have links to jihadist groups. However, the terrorist organization in question denied any connection with Abu Jarrah and Asadi. In parallel, Israel Defense Forces tanks temporarily attacked structures built by the Syrian army in the demilitarized zone in the Golan Heights. This action represents a violation of the separation of forces agreement signed between Israel and Syria after the Yom Kippur War in 1974. According to Syrian state media and a Syrian army source, the Syrian regime maintains that it is responsible for everything that happens on its territory and will not tolerate any attempt to violate the separation agreement. It is important to mention that Israel has attacked air defense facilities in the western Syrian city of Tartus on 2 recent occasions. The first attack claimed the lives of 2 Syrian soldiers and wounded 6 others. For its part, the Syrian Center for Human Rights, linked to the Syrian opposition and based in London, reported that the second attack occurred in the surroundings of Tartus, causing the death of 3 Syrian soldiers and leaving 8 others injured. And in the latest information, it has been highlighted that the areas that suffered attacks were a Hezbollah weapons depot and a defense system aircraft base. Israel has continued its attacks in another neighboring country yesterday. Hezbollah announced the tragic news of the death of one of its fighters in clashes with the Israeli army along Lebanon's southern border. No additional details were provided regarding this death, including the circumstances surrounding it. Since October 7th, the number of members of this militant group has increased to 56. As a result, Israel has continued to carry out bombings in cities and towns located along the border. Official Lebanese reports confirmed that an attack hit a solar power plant in the city of Tir Harfa, which supplied electricity to a public water well. Israel's military offensive in the Gaza Strip has overlapped with clashes between Israeli forces and Hezbollah on the Israel-Lebanon border, leading to a significant rise in tensions along this border. Not since the broader conflict between Hezbollah and Israel in 2006, in which the Lebanese group launched rockets into major Israeli cities, causing severe damage, have there been such deadly border clashes. During that conflict, more than 1,000 people in Lebanon lost their lives, and a considerable part of southern Lebanon, a Hezbollah stronghold, was destroyed by Israeli attacks. In the current context, social media has been flooded with false information, where manipulated videos, erroneous translations, and fraudulent news often overshadow truthful information about the conflict. The spread of disinformation about the recent confrontation between Israel and Hamas is increasing. In recent weeks, users have been sharing false rumors suggesting that crisis actors are fabricating images of bloodshed, or that U.S. Marines are being deployed to Gaza to fight on the ground. And it's worth delving into some of the most recent fake news that has spread across the internet. Several websites are currently promoting a video in which Russian President Vladimir Putin supposedly announces that his country will provide support to the Palestinian people. However, it is important to note that this is not true at all. To date, Russia has issued carefully balanced statements aimed at both sides in the conflict, namely Israel and Hamas. Since the start of hostilities in October, social media users have been consistently spreading false accusations regarding comments made by leaders of other countries about the war. As we navigate this avalanche of information, we appreciate your attention and follow-through.